We need our doctors. They can look through the data. They can look to detect those patterns in lab testing. It works well for acute conditions, but what happens with the chronic conditions, things that are largely brought on by lifestyle? That means the daily choices we make, what we're eating, how we're sleeping or not sleeping, our exercise patterns, do we have meaning and purpose in our lives, the quality of our relationships. These are the lifestyle factors that influence the development of chronic conditions like obesity, like type 2 diabetes. We're seeing an epidemic of these conditions. And the problem is that we're trying to treat these with acute care medicine. Well, these conditions are best treated in your kitchen, on walking paths. They are the ones that really made a whole lot worse by how we're living our lives.
I was really disgruntled when I was working at an HMO and family practice in the 1990s, and which truly gave me the impetus to leave allopathic or traditional medicine almost 25 years ago, not knowing what I was going to do, but just following my intuition, because I really was fed up with how I was feeling, in the sense that, I felt like I was just pushing pharmaceuticals, and that's all I was doing, and side effects, and then, okay, well, then try this, and then try this drug, and on and on and on. And in your book, at the very opening, you discuss how when you've moved and you went to go see a doctor who was well respected, and I want you to elaborate on this, and all of a sudden you became a thyroid gland versus a person, and which is so true with what you're saying, because in traditional medicine, you're diabetic, you're asthmatic, you're arthritic, you become an organ versus a person. And in medical school, we are not taught nutrition. We're not taught anything in terms of regenerating health or preventing disease or reversing disease. And of course, with what you're doing is tremendous, because you're opening up the awareness of looking at people as a whole to assist doctors, nurse practitioners, anyone in the healthcare system really, to understand that it's our lifestyles that are really causing this epidemic. And I agree with you. I keep calling it an epidemic of metabolic disease that's been going on for decades. But and if you could just elaborate on this experience you had with medicine that inspired you to go into this direction.
Sure. Well, I was in my mid-30s. I just moved to a new community. I had a 2-year-old. I was working as a psychologist. I wasn't a licensed psychologist yet. I was a psychotherapist. I was studying for the licensing exam. So I had not had a checkup for a while. So I did some research. Now, those days, it was before the internet, so I didn't go online and look at someone's rating. These were personal recommendations who I trusted. And I went to a medical practice and saw one of their internists. And I remember ran the standard lab panel and then just said, your TSH, that is a marker for thyroid dysfunction, thyroid stimulating hormone. I said, well, it's a little off, so we're going to put you on Synthroid. Now, he wrote a prescription and he said, you're probably going to need this for the rest of your life. Maybe we'll have to adjust the dosage and, get you retested. But that was it. Now, at the time, I really believed that what the doctor said goes. I didn't question. I was also, there was no internet. There was no ChatGPT to go further or any place to look to do more research. But also, what really stood out as I look back at that experience is that they never really asked about what was going on in my life. And the backstory is not only was I pretty stressed out from working full-time, studying, raising a 2-year-old, but my eating habits were horrible. I was binging on sugar all day long. I remember I would just have these bags of M&Ms. I was addicted to sugar. I did not work out. And when I did, I remember I was into running. So I would run 5 miles. I'd get up in the morning, didn't have anything to eat, would get on the treadmill, run 5 miles. That I thought was great, which was not great for, that was years before I discovered yoga and other ways of moving. And so that was it. And so I thought about if I had had a health coach to really help me put the pieces together, to tell my story and to say, well, what if I changed my lifestyle? What if I ate better? Were there nutrients I was missing? Now, a health coach doesn't act as a dietitian or nutritionist, but I could have changed how I was eating. I could have dealt with stress differently. There were just having somebody to listen to at the time. And that could have made a huge difference. And I want to be clear that I might have still needed thyroid hormone supplementation, but there's a good chance that it would have been caught early enough so that my body would have come into balance. But the medical system, as you're pointing out, it was based on, okay, here's this lab result is off, this biomarker's off, so we'll put you on meds, we'll see how you do. And see you, in a couple months to redo the labs. That was it.
And you do raise a very critical point, because how you were discussing at the beginning of the interview how, yes, acute care, I get that. Trauma, heart attack, someone has new onset diabetes, their sugar's out of control. But it's the other 98% that we're really talking about here. And it's just kind of peculiar and ironic that we are, in a sense, not creating, but what has been created is the need for healthcare coaching, since a doctor is not equipped to healthcare coach. And that's, to me, what a doctor was. That's why I went into medical school. And so I'm totally on board with what you're saying, Dr. Scheinberg, because when I opened up my regenerative medicine clinic, I'm helping people to this day get off of medication. I instill a healthy lifestyle because I was in very poor health when I was, at the HMO in the 1990s, and I saw how learning about nutrition formally and things that liver detoxification, bioidentical plant-based hormone therapy, getting sun, getting the proper supplementation, eating healthy fats and healthier protein choices, because we've become such an inflammatory society, hence all this metabolic disease. And so, unfortunately, I've come to believe that we've become the society with a sick mindset, so that the understanding that we have is we go see a doctor because we want our medication. And my whole contention is when a doctor learns to put the prescription pad down and pick up a grocery list, and like you said, because I had a podcast years ago, and on every episode I would say, health begins on the kitchen table, not the doctor's office. And okay, not to sound so anti-doctor, because I am one, and just to let the audience know, it's not the doctor's fault in terms of what they know. It's the system that they're trained in. And, I go as far as saying that when you graduate medical school, you're supposed to take the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm, let food be thy medicine, but it's the hypocritical oath. And if doctors are going to be real with themselves, they're going to understand what I'm saying is true. Yeah. Because I called out myself, and hence helping people restore their health, reverse diabetes type 2, reverse obesity in a very natural way, not putting them on pills for the rest of their life, but food for the rest of their life, good food choices. I think this is how we make a big impact. And then, so Dr. Scheinbaum, you're talking about labs. And one problem that I've seen in traditional medicine is the labs that are done, the traditional lab tests, unfortunately, don't give us enough information. I feel it's very limiting. And so I learned in regenerative medicine what to look for, because I get so tired of patients telling me, oh, well, my doctor says I'm fine. And I said, well, until we do the blood tests that really do matter, I'll determine if you are fine or not. Even though you're telling me you have X, Y, and Z symptoms, that tells me you're actually not fine. And so If you could elaborate just on, your findings and your teachings when it comes to what we really need to understand from at least that perspective.
That is such a good point. So I'll use my husband as an example. He goes to see his internist, and then he shares his lab results, and they said, "Wait a minute! Like this is they're like." This is just, he does the standard panel of CBC and looks at cholesterol. Well, wait a minute. What about breaking down cholesterol and doing more? What about ApoB? I don't see that here. I see, fasting glucose, but what about fasting insulin? What about homocysteine? What about HSCRP, measures of inflammation, for example? And so what I see happening is that the consumer, several trends are happening. So we're seeing this explosion of direct-to-consumer testing where people can just go online, they can order their own tests. And this is good and bad. It's good that helping people feel empowered. And one of the things health coaches do, the way we teach health coaching, is that they help those clients to go back to their doctor, or if to be informed and to get what they need. And if their own physician isn't doing it, then to find some other support. But for many people, they're diagnosing themselves, they're misinterpreting, they're getting these results direct to consumer, they're freaking out, they think that they're dying as they see that, and they're going online or they're using ChatGPT, misinterpreting. So it's problematic, where it's good that people are taking charge of their health, but they're also in danger of being led astray. You see all these ads for, people are essentially practicing medicine without a license. And so it is buyer beware. And that's one of the things that I think health coaches, the way we train our coaches, is to be that patient advocate and to help people make the right choices, to provide the education about labs so that they can feel empowered to go to their doctor to say, hey, I'm really curious. I'd like to, see the fasting insulin test results. So there's working where collaboratively, where the doctor, the health coach, and really the most important person is that patient, that they are the ones who are really taking charge of their health, feeling empowered to make those decisions. And it is getting easier and easier, again, as people are actually becoming their own medical detective. I was interviewing somebody, and he is a guru in terms of AI. He's at Stanford, and he was saying that he went to his doctor, and the doctor said, well, what do you think? Because he said, I know that you probably spent 4 or 5 hours, going through online AI, you read all the research studies, so you know more than me. Well, I would like to know your thoughts. So he was turning it around. It was like the patient will see you now. He said, I'm really curious what you found out there. And so there are examples of that where people are becoming so informed, but as I said, it's a double-edged sword. So we have to be careful that they are not buying into things that are not the best path for them for good health.
Yeah, absolutely, Dr. Scheinbaum, because it's become an issue that because information is so accessible, unlike what we had in our education. It is precarious in the sense that people will self-diagnose and follow this guru, that guru. But that being said, it is a situation where I want the audience to understand that it really is a society where we have, unfortunately, 2 matrices. And the one matrix is outside of the acute care, which we discussed. The other 98% of traditional or allopathic medicine focuses on pharmaceuticals. Mm-hmm. And as I termed the pharmaceutical companies as a pharmafia, very powerful. Do people need medication sometimes? Absolutely. I'm not disregarding that. But as you said, and as I'm totally in agreement with, and what I've been practicing myself for now 20 plus years, is to help people get off medication. And that's what Thomas Edison once said: the future doctor is going to be one that does not put you on medication, but helps you get off. And you replace that with food. But the people don't realize the impact of food. And I even hesitate with my patients to use the word nutrition, because then they think, oh, cabbage and carrots, how boring. And it isn't. Yeah. It's much more fascinating, and you could explore. I always invite people that if they have a local farmer's market on weekends, just go explore foods. Go dive into things you've never tried or tasted. And the one thing I'm a huge advocate of is healthy fats, because I noticed in my health journey that I started to lose weight as I incorporated a more Mediterranean diet with avocados and almonds and olive oil and fish fats, lamb, and of course fruits and vegetables. And it always makes me laugh when I get patients fresh off their exam from their traditional doctor, and they say, oh, my doctor says I shouldn't eat avocados because they're high in fat, or I shouldn't eat salmon because it's too fatty. And I start laughing at them and say, look, let's be honest here. If a doctor is telling you not to eat something that is so healthy, something's wrong with this picture. And I'm sure that you've come across these notions, and I'm just curious, your thoughts on food. And by the way, I always tell people the two healthiest cultures in the world are the Mediterranean cultures and the Japanese, because of all the what are called the omega-3 fats and omega-9 fats that reduce inflammation. And the problem with the American diet is that we focus on omega-6 fats, all the beef and poultry and pork, and do not eat vegetables. So we're really causing all this inflammatory process, and people knowingly or unknowingly are suffering the consequences.
Oh, absolutely. And I went through the fat-free craze. I actually remember so well the snack wells, and what they were doing was replacing the fat with sugar. And so that was not healthy, but we thought it was. I have videos. I remember my older daughter was 2 at the time, and we had a video of her birthday party, and we were commenting, I said, wonderful, she's eating this frozen yogurt, and it's fat-free. It's like, no, what was I doing eating my kids? It was fat-free yogurt, but we thought fat was the enemy. Right. And I actually spent many years as a vegan, as a raw vegan, and didn't realize how bad it felt, especially as a raw vegan. And what did I do? I would just put more kale in my smoothie, and not realizing that I was seriously deprived of protein and the essential nutrients and the fats that I wasn't getting as well. So it was a journey to start to eat fat again, to eat animal foods, but also to really realize that it's so personalized. And so one of the things that is so problematic is that people will go online, they'll see a social media influencer, they'll read something, and then they'll think this is the way to go, not realizing that, well, it might not work for them. And so having a personalized approach is so helpful. And that's why things like elimination diets are beneficial, where you realize, like, my case, I realized I did some food sensitivity testing. Well, eggs aren't really great. Egg whites, which I was eating, all the time, my staple, were not really great. So it's very, very confusing. And I like what you said about nutrition, because people think that this is a subject that is so complicated. But one of the things that I'm passionate about is eating psychology. Before founding FMCA, I taught a lot of courses in psychology of eating, and looking at all of the different factors that come into play. It really is, when we look at how we eat, the choices we make as to what we're eating, how we're eating, when we're eating. It's like a Rorschach, the famous ink blot test. I gave thousands of those in the day. And it is really an insight into who you are, into your family, your friends. We tend to eat the way our social group eats. and particularly our culture, our heritage, and even our geographical region. I'm in Chicago, the affinity for deep dish pizza versus the New York pizza. Different regions have their specialties and different holidays. How can you have 4th of July without ice cream and hot dogs? And there are so many of these traditions are so firmly ingrained, and so being told that you can't eat something can really be an assault on who you are, and not to mention also how you eat and when you eat, and particularly who you are eating with. Sean Stevenson talks a lot about, we have a functional nutrition course, and he teaches for us, and it's all about community. And he shares research on how even if family meals might be sometimes full of conflict, they're still better for you than eating alone. And I think so many people are eating alone. They're lonely, and they are not sharing food in community. And it's really that is the beauty of when we are eating and we are in that parasympathetic state, but we are also surrounded by people in a community and enjoying their company. That is really critical, and I fear we've lost a lot of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's become so isolative. A lot of people working in front of their computers at home, and that sense of community truly is deteriorating. And I feel like we've become like the generation of degeneration, and my whole mission is to create a generation of regeneration going forward, starting with children and their habits. And you're absolutely right, Dr. Scheinbaum, in the sense that food is very personal. It's cultural. People hold on to all these cultural needs and beliefs about food. And that's probably the biggest challenge I have with my patients, where I tell them, look, the reality is any ethnicity that has come to the U.S. has become unhealthier compared to eating wherever it is that they came from. And you're seeing obesity in Japanese, which is unheard of.
Yeah.
And so, or globesity, as we're seeing it going around the world with American food chains going around and adulterating cultures, unfortunately. And the point is I always tell patients that food styles obviously are a choice. And patients have asked, like, well, how do you eat? And I tell them, well, the reality is I'm not so much an advocate, or I don't support per se if someone says, I want to be ketogenic the rest of my life, I want to be vegan the rest of my life, I want to be vegetarian, Paleolithic. What I tell them is, what I want everyone to be universally is a whole fooditarian. Just focus on whole foods, regardless of your style of eating, regardless of your culture. And so, and you're right. Food allergy testing is key, because people can understand, oh my God, I've been eating this all my life, and yet I do feel a little tired, weight gain, or whatever the case might be, foggy brained whenever I eat these foods. I mean, just like nightshade vegetables, they could be so healthy, but they could be very inflammatory. So, pointing these things out. And so, and I think that that's critical, that just people understand that it really is about focusing on fresh foods. And I think the problem, though, is particularly in this country, is that for the last, 4 or 5 decades at the very least, we've been exposed to all these processed foods, that processed foods is the real food of most people, and they're making themselves sick without realizing it, or they're always eating fast food, as I used to, or I like to say, I used to be a carboholic until I stopped being a carboholic. You were a sugarholic.
Yeah.
And it's just bringing out these situations. And as we said at the very beginning of the show, how obesity and weight is epidemic. And you noted in your book how, Ozempic is being passed around like candy, and it could be very dangerous because of the side effects, and people not even understanding that these types of drugs actually help lose muscle weight or provoke muscle weight on top of fat. And so a lot of these people look very gaunt and unhealthy, and they go what's called sarcopenia, or lack of muscle mass, which actually expedites or shortens your lifespan, the less muscle you have. So I just want to hear your thoughts in terms of, these forms of drugs that are used for weight loss. And I know they could be helpful, but I think the point nonetheless is still being missed with nutrition.
Yeah, I think that it has to do with the theory of locus of control. And so when you take a medication, there's an external locus of control. It's that drug is doing something to you. And when you have that belief, whether it's about a drug, whether it's about even a person in your life, they're making me do this. They're making me feel sad, for example. That person makes me so angry. This drug is going to do something physiologically to me, and I will lose weight. And it's a sense that it's outside of you, where you really feel the sense of self-efficacy is that you can take charge. And when you have this internal locus of control, it's a different way of going about it. It is, I'm choosing to take this medication for a short period of time to get a jump start because everything I've done to this point perhaps has failed in terms of losing weight, and that's really important to me. But doing it with a guide, doing it with a health coach. There's been some great studies. One just came out recently, showed that a group that just was put on the medication, they lost weight, and maybe they were given a pamphlet about lifestyle, the equivalent of a pamphlet. And the group that they really looked at had made significant changes, the experimental group, they got a GLP-1 agonist like Ozempic, and they had coaching. They had support for following through, as you mentioned, they did resistance training, for example. They were educated about the importance of muscle mass and also the importance of eating whole foods so that they were not given that message, you need this drug and you'll just be on it for the rest of your life. And that's unfortunately where we're at with so many people. It is a dependency as opposed to a choice that it can be, for many people, effective temporarily. I've seen that when I was a psychologist. I worked with many people. I was specializing in mind-body medicine. So I was the renegade psychologist. I was not doing traditional psychotherapy. I was doing mind-body medicine. Going back to the 70s, I was doing stress management workshops. But what I was helping people with who were on medication was how to get off them, but using cognitive behavior therapy, using breathing, relaxation strategies, and ways of, again, having the sense that it is inside you to make these changes. And the more you practice thinking a certain way, the more you go out and take a walk, for example, new neural pathways will be formed, and then you can be weaned off this medication. So I think the same thing holds true with these medications. For many people, they're very helpful, done the right way with support, with lifestyle change.
And Dr. Scheinbaum, as we're wrapping up here, it's been a wonderful conversation, by the way. I love it. My question is okay, patients or clients, the audience, general audience is going to listen to this, and they're going to want to know, how can I find one of these functional medicine coaches?
Yes.
What do they do? Where do they go? Who do they call?
They can go to our website, functionalmedicinecoaching.org, and we have a directory. They can go to the resource section, find a coach. They can find one in their area, but most coaches work online, so they don't need to be in your geographical area. They can support you making these changes. If you want to be a coach, we need millions of health coaches, and the world is really waking up to the need for this kind of support.
No, absolutely. And I really do hope you've been very inspirational. And I really hope that doctors themselves kind of wake up and say, I need to join this movement because I want to be the doctor that I've been trained to be, but I really need to understand what's going to really help my patients and going forward. And I want to show your book once again. Here it is. Your health coach will see you now. This is the best way you're going to get healthy. Dr. Scheinbaum, I want to say
Thank you.
thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate all your wisdom, your experience, and your mission, enthusiasm, and passion to really make this a healthier world, impacting millions of lives.
Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And press the link below to find Dr. Scheinbaum's information. Thank you, guys.